All right, so we are finishing the first chapter of Seder Birchos HaNehenin, and I hope you all got the PDF that I sent you.
Hi, this is Dan. I got everything.
Everything excellent.
I'm driving home. I'll be home in about 10 minutes, so that I can,
No worries. No worries. I know in California you're not allowed to talk on the phone, but maybe on a shiur you're allowed. I don't know how it works. Like my son said to me, my 4-year-old, we were going swimming on Sunday, so it was starting to rain and talking about thunder and the rain and it's dangerous. He said, no, if you stay at Bracha on the thunder, it's not dangerous. So if you watch a shiur, hopefully it's all good.
No, I'm on my Bluetooth.
Okay, so, okay, perfect, even better. Okay, so we're up to Yutes in the Alter Rebbe, and we're learning about the fact that, like we mentioned yesterday, Ala Michya does not cover you for Bar Nefashos, and Bar Nefashos does not cover you for Ala Michya. And as I sent out in the notes today, that is the psak of the Alter Rebbe and of the Mishnah Berurah. However, there are poskim, the Knesset Agdola, for example, who says that Bar Nefashos is a catch-all bracha, similar to Shahakal. Because if you pay attention to the bracha, you could say that it includes everything. Bar Nefashos Rabbis v'chesroinon. Hashem creates many souls and what they're lacking. In addition, he gives us things that are lahachis b'hem, to enliven us. Tosfos says that that's talking about the essentials and the delicacies. So you could say, well, that includes everything. So, according to the Knesset Agdola, if you would have a doubt whether to say Ala Michya or Bar Nefashos, you would say Bar Nefashos. In practice, the Alter and the Mishnah Berurah do not paskin like that. So one certainly should not say Bar Nefashos in the case of a doubt. However, if one did, Yaakov Yosef says one does not have to say, not even in the case of a doubt. If one said Bar Nefashos when one should have said Ala Michya or Ala Eitz or any of those, Yaakov Yosef says you don't say the other bracha because of a safek bracha. Because after all, some say that he is Yotze. But again, you shouldn't do it in the first place.
If you're in a situation that you don't know and you don't have who to ask or etc., you would say
No. Even the Yaakov Yosef says you don't say it.
You don't say any bracha.
You don't say any bracha. Only thing is, he says, if you already said it, okay, then don't go back and say the other bracha that you should have said. But he says that, in fact, if you haven't said it yet, you shouldn't say. Don't say either one. If you're not sure, don't say either one. Now, the best thing is, of course, to eat something else that you know is one, you know is the other, and that way you'll be covered. Can I repeat the questions? Yes. The question was, if you have nothing else, if you ate a food, you don't know the after bracha, if it's Bar Nefashos or Ala Michya, let's say, what should you do? So the Yaakov Yosef says not to do anything, because the fact is, according to most poskim, one does not cover the other. So you just don't say anything. But like I said, if you can get other foods that you can say Bar Nefashos on, and Ala Michya and whatever, then you do. I also want to mention an opinion that is also not brought down in the Alter Rebbe, but the Yaakov Yosef brings it down, which is that vegetables are covered by me'in shalosh b'di'evet. Me'in shalosh means either Ala Michya, or Ala Gefen, or Ala Eitz, because you say Va'al tenuvas hasada. In those brachas, and all of them, you say Va'al tenuvas hasada, and on the produce of the field. So again, it's not lachatchila, and again, even in the case of a doubt, you should not say it. But if you already did say it, some say that you are covered by Tenubas Asada. Okay, we continue with your tests. Afikach, therefore, Kol Dover Shenestapek Bivrachasai. Anything that you're not sure about the bracha. I need you to mute yourself, whoever it is there. That's davening. It's wonderful, but nevertheless, thank you. Anything that you're not sure if it's burn nefashos or me'ein shalish. If you want to eat it not during the meal, now of course, if you're going to eat it during the meal, it's going to be covered by the after bracha regardless. I mentioned, but if you want to eat it not during the meal, then you should eat it together with something whose after brachas burn nefashos, as well as something else whose after brachas me'ein shalish. Whatever the me'ein shalish it is that you're not sure about. If he's not sure if it's mezonos or burn nefashos, you eat another mezonos food. If you're not sure if it's ala eitz and burn nefashos, you eat an ala eitz food, and so on and so forth. You're going, for example, you're not sure if a dish is a burn nefashos or an ala micha. I'll give you a very practical example of that. We're going to have a machlekes later about how much flour you have to consume to be able to say an ala micha. Do you have to eat a kazayas of the ingredients total, as long as the majority of the ingredients is flour? Or do you have to eat a kazayas of the actual flour? We mentioned this yesterday. So there's a machlekes about that. And let's say you're in that situation. You had cheesecake. The bottom of the cheesecake is mezonos, and that's the main thing, because in halacha the mezonos is always considered the main thing. Yeah, as long as it's there for taste. If it's only there to hold it, you know what I'm saying? If it's only there to hold it so your hands shouldn't get dirty, sticky, then you don't say a bracha on mezonos. But if it's there to add to the taste, then mezonos is considered the main thing. You're going to say mezonos on it. But to be able to say the ala michya, some say you have to eat a kazayas of the actual flour. And not only that, you have to eat a kazayas of the actual flour within 4 or 5 minutes, depending on the shiurim of kedei achilas pras, the minimum amount of time to eat. So that's a lot of cheesecake. Now, if you tell my kids, they'll be very yeah, some people will be very happy. But on the other hand, what if you can't? You don't know what to do. So he says, take something else, a regular cracker, that's most, clearly flour. Take a few of those, and then take a drink or whatever, and that way you'll make both after brachas. We're going, for example, I said that already. You eat another thing, who's after brachas burn nefashos, and another thing who's after bracha is burn nefashos. Then you make an ala michya and burn nefashos, and then you cover this food regardless. Chamaran is asking, would breaded chicken nuggets be mezonos and burn nefashos after? So breaded chicken nuggets, as well as schnitzel, fish sticks, all that sort of thing is a big issue. The simple halacha would seem is that it should be mezonos, but you cannot say ala michya unless you have a kedayis of flour. But on the other hand, many poskim say that is an exception to the rule, and in that case, the mezonos is considered secondary, and you don't say mezonos. So we're going to get to that later. I didn't really prepare for today, and it's really more a question of Ikar and Tafel, which we haven't learned yet, so we'll get to that in Mitzvah Shem. Okay. Moving right along to number 20. The mistapik bepri. Let's say you're not sure about a fruit, if it's one of the 7 species. or not. So how is that possible? I don't know. But whatever, you have a fruit. You're not sure if it's a fig or if it's a prune. Place. Kasha v'mais, as they say. That's a fact, you're not sure. You're not sure if it's a cranberry or a raisin. How about that? Eat another fruit. Who's after bracha. He's one of the meaning to do. Eat another fruit who's after bracha, for sure one of the sugar species. Right? Baruch Hu appears to be able to say the Allah eats bracha. Yotze gam l'prizem yonif them, you will be covering this fruit.
Hey, Ariel. Your mic is on. Your mic is on.
It's a little Let's say you have raisins, but you're not sure if the raisins are cranberries. Craisins, as they say. You're not sure if the raisins are craisins. So here you don't have to eat Shivas Aminim plus an apple. Because when you say Allah eats, you cover all fruits. Understand? Actually, cranberries could be Adama, so that's more complicated. But whatever, make up the case as you wish. If you have something that is definitely a fruit, it's definitely oitz, but it could be it's from the Shivas Aminim, or maybe not. So then you make you eat another fruit that is definitely one of the Shivas Aminim. You say Allah eats, and then you cover it regardless. Let's say you do not have another pre. You don't have a way out of it by drinking wine and making ala gefen, or eating a grain food and making ala mechia. And then you'll sneak in the Allah eats because of your doubt. Okay, listen carefully again. You had a fruit which you're not sure is in the Shivas Aminim or not. You had raisins or craisins. But now you don't have another whatever. You don't have grapes or pomegranates handy. Okay, so you have an idea. I'm going to drink wine, or I'm going to have ala mechir. So I'm going to have a mezonos. Then I'm going to be able to say ala gefen or ala mechir. Now that I'm saying it anyway, and I'm not sure if I have to say ala eitz, so I'll just throw in ala eitz. And that way, I'm not saying a bracha levatala, because I was going to say that after bracha anyway. I'm just going to throw in some extra words in case I have to say them. Alter Rebbe says, no, you're not allowed to do it. That's not a way out. That's not a way out. No, track down a grape, track down a fig, get something else, say ala eitz. The idea is you're not allowed to sneak something into a bracha if it doesn't belong there. For sure, if it doesn't belong there, for sure. But even if it maybe doesn't belong there, it's not proper to sneak it in. What do I mean? An example where it doesn't belong there for sure. This is not like some of the poskim who say, let's say you had less than a shear of a fruit. You had a half a grape. Normally you don't say a bracha on a half a grape. It's not a kazayas. But now you're saying anyway. Ala gefen, okay, ala gefen is not a good example because ala gefen covers grapes. But yet, anyway, you're saying ala michya and something else. Yeah, throw in ala gefen. Throw in ala eitz. Half a grape, yeah, you don't really have to say a bracha achroin on it, but you're saying the bracha achroin anyway. Big deal, throw it in. That's what some poskim actually say that. No. The majority of the poskim disagree. And they say, since there is no obligation to say it, we don't throw in extra words, stam, into a bracha. Doesn't work that way. So just like we don't throw in extra words that for sure are not necessary, we also don't throw in extra words that may not be necessary. So here you're not sure if you have to say ala eitz because you're not sure if you ate raisins or craisins. So maybe you have to say it, maybe not. you really shouldn't throw it in the ala michi because of the doubt. Therefore, you should find a ala eitz fruit, eat it, and be able to say ala eitz for sure.
Your Honor, sorry, Lee.
I posted it on the group chat. Where is he?
What's up?
It's there. It's there. Nevertheless, I will send it to him.
What's that you're talking about sending again?
So if he's not coming, we're going to have trouble with the minion, my friends. I was already schwach because David backed out, as did Moshe. It's going to be tight. Ramazav, Chanan coming, and
How many people do we have? How many people do we have there?
I have to have a minion for them. Anyway, let's continue on Chaf. Therefore, you should only eat it during the meal. Okay, however, listen carefully. If he already ate it, then he should include it because of a doubt.
You already ate what, so
If he already ate the ala michya food, and he already ate the food that he's not sure about, and now he has no choice. He doesn't have a ala eitz food that he can say ala eitz on. So he has the possibility of not saying it after bracha. That's one option. The second option is to throw in some extra words soon after bracha that he's saying anyway. In that case, we say throw in the extra words. You shouldn't plan on it, but if you have no choice, you can do it. I'll give you a simple example. So everybody knows when you have a kois shel bracha, when you have a cup of wine that you're saying a bracha on, kiddush, abdallah, whatever, you're supposed to drink a mole lukmav. You're supposed to drink one cheekful, right? Now, generally, if you only drink one cheekful and you don't finish a revius, you don't have a full 3 ounces. I mean, there's different opinions about a revius, but let's just say 3 ounces, maybe 3.3, whatever. You don't finish the 3 ounces. There's a machlokes if you have to say ala gefen or not. Because some say that the shear for wine, different than other liquids, is a kazayas. Kazayas, a cheekful is probably a kazayas already. So some say no, it's like the same as other liquids, it has to be a revius. So when it comes to kiddush, you're probably going to be okay because you make kiddush and you wash. Kiddush is connected to the meal, like we said yesterday, because you can't have the meal without kiddush. So therefore, the benching is going to cover the kiddush one. So whether you had a half a cup, half a revius, a whole revius, makes no difference. It's covered by the benching. However, if you had a malay lugma, if you had a cheekful by Havdalah, you didn't drink the full revius. Now, for your information, halacha says that the person who makes Havdalah is supposed to finish the wine, with the exception of what he pours onto the Havdalah candle. Other than that, he's supposed to finish the wine. And the Mishnah Berurah says the reason he's supposed to finish the wine is because otherwise I'll have a question about an ala gefen, excuse me. But that's not so clear. Rav Deitch said when I was learning with him, because he pointed out that it doesn't say this expression concerning the cup of benching. Concerning the cup of benching, you'll have the same question. If you didn't have the whole cup, or the whole revius, you'll have a question about the ala gefen. So according to Mishnah Berurah, it should have said the same thing there. But in any case, whatever it is, you didn't follow that. You had only a rov revius. So now you have a question about the bracha achrayna. So logically you could say, no problem. I'll have some mezonos. And I'll say ala mechia, and I'll throw in ala gefen. Because I'm saying ala mechia anyway. I'm not sure if I have to say ala gefen because I didn't quite have the shear, but maybe I did have the shear. So I'll throw in ala gefen. I know somebody that used to do this every week. He didn't really like grape juice. By the way, he had to make Havdalah. So he made Havdalah, he had the minimum shear of grape juice, like cheekful. And then he would have, his Malav Malka was mezonos usually, and he would say mezona ala mechia, and he would put in ala gefen. And I taught him this halacha. Now halacha says that you're not supposed to put yourself in this position. If you're already in that position and you have no choice, okay, then you can do it. But you shouldn't plan on this, putting yourself in this position. I need to say you shouldn't plan on having only a cheek. Force yourself, drink the whole revius, or whatever it is, because otherwise you're causing yourself to add words to a bracha that maybe don't belong there.
Drink some grapes.
I mean, grapes.
Why didn't you just tell?
The question, I'll repeat the question. Emmanuel is asking if you can have grapes in that case to make up the after bracha. So the correct after bracha on grapes is ala eitz. And actually, now that you're saying it, ala eitz does cover ala gefen b'di'evet. And now that you're saying it also, I'm just realizing ala michya does also cover ala gefen b'di'evet. So that's an interesting point. So what's better in that case? Is it better to throw in the extra words which may not belong there? Or is it better just to rely on the fact that ala gefen, that ala eitz covers ala gefen b'di'evet, or even ala michya covers ala gefen b'di'evet? That's a good question. Okay, David is asking.
Why do you, what?
Yeah, go ahead, Daniel.
And if somebody is in that position, I thought you could make Havdalah on some other drink if you don't like grape juice. Why was he even putting himself in that position?
That is true. You can. You can make it on tea, coffee, and the like. I don't remember why he didn't do that. I don't recall what the issue was, why I didn't do that. But you are right. You could make Havdalah on those things. Kiddush, it's questionable. And even Havdalah, it's better to make it on wine, but you could make it on other things. David is asking, wasn't there a custom there to look into the Havdalah cup after to see his own reflection? I never heard that. You're supposed to look at the wine when you're making Havdalah. But afterwards, I never heard. You drink the cup, I can't do this. I never heard that. Also, you said something about grape juice, so doesn't the Rebbe say it's best to make Havdalah on wine, not grape juice? The Rebbe said it's best to make Kiddush on wine. Grape juice for Havdalah, not the end of the world.
He read something about having to be read,
Why?
something about the vision.
The vision is Kiddush. The Kiddush wine helps the vision. So Havdalah, I mean, we do put Havdalah on our wine, on our eyes. Maybe that's what you mean, but I never heard that Havdalah has to be read. Never heard that.
Never seen anybody making Havdalah with light. Yiddish I've seen, but not.
I mean, I can't say that I've specifically remembered noticing one way or the other, but there's no reason why not. There's no reason why not. In terms of grape juice or wine, so there is a question if grape juice is considered wine. Most places can say that it is, because it's this type of species that we make wine out of. Some say that it's not because it's pasteurized, so it can't become alcoholic, but that's a minority opinion. But it would seem that even according to that opinion, at the very least, it should be considered an important beverage even if you don't consider it wine, it should be considered an important beverage, so it should be good enough for Havdalah. That's what it would seem. I mean, wine is definitely better just because it follows all opinions, but certainly it's not as strict as Kiddush when it comes to grape juice or wine. Havdalah is not as strict as Kiddush. Okay, so I also want to mention, I sent this out in the notes earlier, the Trumat Sadeshin, who is the one who says this whole concept, that a person should not plan on sneaking extra words into the Me'ain Shalish. Trumat Sadeshin, by the way, is the Mahari Isserlon. He was, if I'm not mistaken, a student of the Maharam. And he was a very famous, one of the Ashkenazi Poskim, the later Ashkenazi Poskim. The Kitzur, the Trumat Sadeshin says that he proves that you're not allowed to sneak extra words into Ala Gefen, Ala Mechi, whatever. What is it based on? We mentioned in the past that when it comes to a after bracha on wheat kernels that are cooked in such a manner that they do not stick together. So we mentioned that there's an opinion that says the after bracha is ala adama ala priha adama. And but we're not sure if you're supposed to make that bracha or not, so have it during the meal. So he brings that, it says in the Gemara Yerushalmi that Rav Yirmiyah, because of this doubt, he never ate wheat kernels in his life. Because of this doubt. He never ate wheat kernels in his life. So says the Trumat Sadeshin, why did he have to never eat wheat kernels in his life? He could have just had it together with an ala michya, or with wine, or with fruit, and he could have put in ala adama, ala priya adama, just in case. So he says, we see from here that you're not allowed to sneak in extra words that may not belong there. So that's an interesting thing. Okay, we continue with Alter Rebbe, exactly, Seder Birchos HaNehenin, Chaf Aleph. The last halacha in Perek Aleph. Hayayin. Hoyel v'hu roish l'chol ha'mashkin. Sorry. Because wine is the head of all drinks, therefore it covers with its bracha, all other types of drinks. Whether from the bracha beforehand, which is sha'akal, if those drinks were in front of him when he made the bracha of hagafen, or he had in mind to drink them, even though he did not specifically intend to cover them, they are automatically covered. Okay, before we continue, I want to point out a few things. First of all, why is it that wine covers all drinks? Alter Rebbe says the reason wine covers drinks is because it is roish l'chol hamashkin. It is the most important of all the drinks. Because it's most important of the drinks, so its bracha covers all the other drinks. Besides people who drink olive oil. That's an interesting point. Somebody says that? Where? Okay. Can't argue with Torah anytime, especially if I don't know who said it. Well, there used to be a drink that was considered medicinal, but it was considered a normal drink.
but it's me.
Oh, he's good. He's good. Yeah.
Very-
He's from Miami Beach.
Yeah.
Pretty sure he's from Miami Beach. Yeah. He's very good.
It's a whole series on this stuff.
Nice. I'm just looking if he discusses it here. I don't see it here. Okay. So, the Maisa. Getting messages on my Hangout.
I'm getting into.
Getting on my Hangout. Besides what? Oh, sorry. Emmanuel is saying that you don't make if you are inclined to drink olive oil, you don't make any bracha because that's not normal. But if you drink it in a way that is normal, which they used to have a certain drink with mix in certain other ingredients, and it was considered normal. So the bracha on that is ha'etz, the only drink that is ha'etz. So Emmanuel said that he heard that wine does not cover that. So the Maisa, that's point number. Oh, so point number one is that the reason wine covers the wine covers the bracha for drinks is different than the reason that bread covers the bracha for foods. Listen carefully. The reason bread covers the bracha for foods is not because bread is the head of all foods. It's simply because bread is considered the main part of the meal, and all the other foods are considered secondary parts of the meal.
For what situation? In every situation?
No. And that's why there are foods that are not covered by the bracha of bread. For example, snack foods, eaten as dessert, for example, or even not eaten as dessert. If you decide to eat some potato chips in the middle of the meal, you have to make a bracha on the potato chips, peanuts, popcorn, and desserts. You have to make a bracha on all of those. Why? Because those are not considered secondary to the bread, because you eat them also during the day as a snack, not only as a meal food. So if bread were the head of all foods, who cares if it's snack food or meal food? It's the head. But that's not why bread covers it. It covers it because it's the main thing, and the others are secondary. And that's why it doesn't cover everything. But wine is not like that. It's not that the coffee is secondary to wine. What's coffee have to do with wine? They're two separate things. No. Wine is important. It's like the king. When you take care of the king, everything else is covered. That's all. It's covered. Based on this idea, so the Sforim here, Rabbi Green, and the Alter Rebbe says that according to this, that this is the vort, you don't have to drink a certain amount of wine in order to cover the other drinks. When it comes to bread, if you're going to eat less than a kazayas, there's a machloikis if it covers the rest of the meal foods. Because maybe it only covers it if you eat a kazayas. It's a normal way of eating. Less than that it's not such a normal way of eating, it doesn't cover it. So they say that's by bread, where it's covering it as a secondary component. So you have to eat a normal amount to make it the main thing. When it comes to wine, again, it's not about main thing and secondary thing. It's the head. So no matter how much you have, it covers it.
Because now you say from Kiddush to Shul.
Exactly.
Kiddush, and then you.
All the drinks are covered. When you hear Kiddush and Shul,
Question.
1 second, and you drink some of the wine, all the drinks are covered. However, if you heard Kiddush and Shul, I pointed this out in the notes, if you heard Kiddush and Shul and you didn't drink some of the wine, which is fine, you don't have to drink any wine to be Yotze Kiddush. It's a nice thing to drink wine, to koishel bracha, nice, and all kinds of blessings for it, but you're yotze kiddush without drinking any wine. Well, now if you want to drink drinks, obviously you have to make a shahakal, because the wine only covers the other drinks if you drank wine, not if somebody else drank wine. 1 second, Daniel, yes, go ahead. Daniel?
Yeah, I had a question. Yeah, here I am.
Yeah.
My question is, I've been in different houses where, let's say on Shabbat, we're going to have dessert, and sometimes people say the bracha on the bread, on the cake, or they'll eat a piece of bread and eat the cake. So I don't know or sometimes they'll just bench and then have dessert. So what's the right thing to do?
One more time. 2 questions. You're asking about cake for dessert, and you're asking about dessert after benching. Are those your 2 questions?
Yeah, no, I guess there's 3 questions. Number 1 is, if you're having a meal and you want to have dessert, do you have to make a bracha on the cake or the fruit, or do you have a piece of bread instead, and you don't have to have the say a bracha on the cake or the fruit, or should you just bench and then have dessert? Those got it?
I got it. So there's a few questions here. I'm going to answer them in short because the long answers I'm going to save for when we get to it in the shiur. Before I was asking for raise the volume, yes. Just going to send her for all the link. So again, like I said, we are going to cover this later, so I'm just going to answer quickly. The short answer is there is no option to not make a bracha on dessert if you're supposed to, because you can't eat without a bracha, and bread doesn't cover you for dessert generally. Now, if you literally eat the dessert with bread, if you put it on top of bread like a sandwich, like an ice cream bread sandwich or whatever, then yes, then you don't have to make a bracha. But generally, you have to make a bracha on them. In terms of saying the bracha, benching and then eating dessert, I mean, you're causing an unnecessary bracha, because the after bracha is not necessary. Why should you delay it to be able to say an after bracha? Now, on Shabbos, when you need to get to 100 brachas, there is a point to doing that. But during the week, there is no point in benching first and then having dessert. In terms of the bracha on cake, that is complicated, and it's going to tie into the next chapter, because very often cake is a suffix hamotzi. Any cake that could be hamotzi, you're not going to say a bracha on at the end of the meal, even if it's a dessert, because since it might be hamotzi, it's already covered by the hamotzi in the beginning of the meal. Follow?
What about a piece of fruit though for dessert?
The fruit is definitely
what we do then.
If you for some reason don't want to make not a shackle, sorry. Fruit is eitz. If for some reason you have something against making a bracha on the eitz, you can take a piece of bread and put the fruit on the bread and eat it together. But there's no reason for that. You can
so it really.
So
it sounds like the basic idea then is when you're having dessert, you should say a bracha on whatever you're going to eat. Another bracha. If you're in a meal, and you should say a bracha on whatever you're going to say for dessert. That's correct?
Correct. That's the general rule. There might be exceptions, as we're going to see later, especially with mezonos, but that is the general rule, yes. Chaim Aron says, someone told us that if you don't have mind, other wine at the table, you have to make another agafen. Is that true? Well, what do you mean by that? If you don't have mind to cover other agafen on the table, other wine on the table, you have to make another agafen. What do you mean by that?
I was at a meal over Pesach, and my wife heard Kiddush and then went to drink different wine that wasn't the Kiddush wine, and the wife, who was the daughter of a Rav, said you had to make another, like a hagafen over that wine that she was going to drink.
No. Disagree. I disagree.
Cool.
I disagree. Now, in general, whatever the balabayas brings to the table, whatever the owner of the house brings to the table, or the wife of the owner for that matter, who's also running the show there, is covered. When you say a hagafen, you're intending to cover whatever is brought to you. When you say hamoitzi, whatever is brought to anything. If you yourself were drinking and then you decided to bring another type of bottle, you would also not make hagafen unless you decided you were finished drinking. And then you change your mind, you decided to bring more, then you would say hagafen. So that's not right. I don't know where she got that from. She may have been talking about hatoy v'hametiv. Hatoy v'hametiv is true. That's a separate bracha that you make when you bring other wine. And you didn't finish the first wine, and you bring other wine, and it's a nicer wine or a different wine at least.
It's a higher quality wine.
Higher quality or different. So then you say it's a different bracha, hatoy v'hametiv. That's true. That's true, but that's not a hagafen. Yes.
Thanks.
So I heard that certain shuls they have kiddush in the shul,
Yep.
and then you do lunch at your home, and I heard that you said that you have to say kiddush wherever you're located again.
You don't have to, but some say that you should, and some people do it as a nice.
What are the opinions on that? Who says that you should do? If I'm having already like a snack, I'm having some nash in the shul.
So if you heard kiddush in shul, you have to have some mezonos to be able to be yotze the kiddush, because you have to have a soda in the place of the kiddush. Mezonos counts, another glass of wine counts. So that's number one. You get home, and you want to have your meal with bread. Most boys can say you do not have to have kiddush again. The Vilna Gaon says you do. So if you want to, b'vakasha, no problem. But most boys can say you don't have to.
To say at your home, that's the first seudah. Before you leave the shul. Before you leave the shul.
No. You make an ala michya before you leave the shul. You make an ala michya before you leave the shul, because ala michya is something you're supposed to say in the same place.
If you forget, you have to say ala michya before you bench.
You definitely have to say ala michya before you wash, or maybe even before you bench, as we said yesterday, if you forgot before you wash. But in the first place, you're supposed to say before you leave. You forgot and you got home already, you should say before you wash, or even during the meal, like we said yesterday. But I did see something interesting that I mentioned. We were talking yesterday about brachas said before the meal not being covered by benching. So I said yesterday that kiddush is covered, right? The after bracha on kiddush is covered by benching, because kiddush is part of the meal. But I saw an interesting thing. He brings in the laws of brachas by Rabbi Bodner, from Rabbi Shlomo Zalman, that when you make kiddush and you have something to eat before you wash, not in shul. In shul,
Yeah, so
whatever
in
you
the
have.
Moroccan community, they have different simanim.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Some
different
people
simanim before
they
you-
do that. Some people I think they do it to be able to say extra brachas, 100 brachas, whatever. He says that because that's connected to the kiddush, and the kiddush is connected to the meal, you don't have to make a after bracha
On that point?
on those little things that you eat. It's a big kiddush. It's a big kiddush to me. But that's what he says. No. He's not saying that you're eating them as appetizers. He's saying because you're eating them as you go into the meal. Kiddush is part of the meal. This is connected to kiddush, so it becomes connected to the meal. It's a big chiddush to me. I'm not going to say everybody agrees to it because I didn't look into it, but I did find it to be an interesting opinion. Yes.
Is there any time frame in terms of how you make kiddush and you have your nash, and then before you wash? I mean, a lot of people do that to make the kiddush good because they're waiting for it to be served or an otzi or whatever. But
Is there an amount of time that you have to wash after kiddush? Is that your question? Well, if one of those nashes is a mezonos,
right.
well, then anyway, you already yotze kiddush technically.
Right.
If it's not a mezonos and you need the bread to be yotze kiddush, then in the first place, you're not supposed to have a prolonged delay. You're supposed to go straight. But in the b'diavad, unless it was an extremely prolonged time, it's still going to be good.
What happens if you, instead of having something to eat, you have more wine?
Wine is good. More wine is good. More wine counts.
It's basically the same thing as if you have more some teeth.
Correct. More wine is just as good as mezonos.
What is the status of somebody's like
What is the status of the little glasses of wine? Yes. Are they kosher bracha? This is the common minhag in many shuls, where in order to save time, that the guy who made kiddush shouldn't have to pour after kiddush, pour. So they pour all these little cups, and they give it out, and then everybody holds it, hagafen, and they drink. Rav Deitch holds that is not kosher bracha. That is a zecher lekosher bracha. It's like to remember the concept of kosher bracha. But it's not kosher bracha. It's simple, he says. Why? Kosher bracha has to have a shear. If it would have a shear, if it would have a revius in it, it would be kosher bracha. Because you heard kiddush, you're holding it. It's like the kid, and you heard it. So when you hear it, it's like you said it. So it's like kosher bracha. It's like kiddush. But if it's a small amount, it's less than a shear. It'd be kosher bracha. No. You don't have to make a bracha. You heard his bracha, and his bracha covers you. It's fine.
And technically, you don't have to inject it.
No, you don't have to. But if you want the concept of kosher bracha, Rav Deitch holds that's not kosher bracha. What does that mean? He's making kiddush on them. In order to make kiddush on something, it has to have a proper amount for kiddush.
But he has the sand.
Okay, so he's making kiddush on that. What the things that don't have the proper amount? How is he making kiddush on them? They're not.
So those of us who stand there with an empty cup or with something in the cup and he pours in.
He pours in. That's something else. He pours in, so he's giving you kosher bracha.
Other people close the wine bottle, so it's not included in the kiddush. So that's nothing.
I mean, the reason they do it is because they say maybe it's pagum, but I don't know. It's hard to understand exactly.
What happens if he puts?
I look at my computer and I feel like we have a minion at this year, but it doesn't really count for the minion. Yes, question.
Question.
Just 1 second.
A shear,
Yes.
then
Each cup would be a kosher bracha, yes. If each person would have a shear, then each cup would be a kosher bracha.
And if he has his cup and then he has another cup partially full with wine, and that's more than the shear, and then people take part of it,
Right.
would that be kosher bracha?
That I never heard from Abdaish one way or the other. On the one hand, that it has a revius. On the other hand, there's no one person drinking from it. It's all for, I don't know. My father does that, and I do it sometimes. When I have guests that kind of are not used to the idea of drinking from a cup that somebody else drank from. You know what I'm saying? If it's just a hamish of people, I make kiddush, I drink, I add wine, and then pour it to each person, or they pass it down, they pour it themselves. But if it's a group that's not used to that style, so I pour a cup almost full, so it's a revius, and I kind of have in mind that the kiddush is going on both, and then I pour some into that cup before I drink, so that they shouldn't look at me funny, and then and then I pass it on. So, I mean, Lemaisa, when you make kiddush, they have to have a revius to be kosher bracha. To be kosher bracha. Lemaisa, you could say kiddush on a cup that's in front of you, even if you're not holding it. I mean, lechatchili is supposed to hold it, but if it's on the table, if you're not holding it, it counts. So, I think so. I don't have a proof, but I think
So before you pass around your cup that you made kiddush on, like to your wife or to your guests, etc., you're supposed to pour a little bit of wine to make it not pugum.
Correct. Now, some say the Mishnah Berurah holds if you drink from the same cup, then it's not pogum anyway, because it's a continuation of the same. But the Alter Rebbe doesn't hold to that. And even the Mishnah Berurah is only if you drink from the actual cup. But if you're passing it on to people that are not going to really want to drink from the same exact cup, then you should definitely add some, because otherwise it's pogum.
Well,
All right, my friends.
Question.
Yes.
What about this is maybe slightly off topic, but anyways, there's people make kiddush on mashka. What's the deal with that? And does that also have the same shiurim as wine? I mean, yeah.
So before the age of 40, the Rebbe absolutely forbade anybody to make kiddush on mashka. I'm talking about his Hasidim, obviously. But after the age of 40, by day, it's not forbidden. By night, it's absolutely not allowed unless you have nothing else. But by night, it could be that you're simply not yotze on Chamar Medina. Some say that you have to have wine, and that you're not yotze without wine. So if you're stuck in a desert island, you have no wine, that's something else.
Did you make it on bread then?
Better on bread
Is
or
it better on bread?
Yeah.
Or on beer?
At night, it's even better on bread. At night, it's even better on bread.
Does that apply to Yom Tov also?
At night, yes. At night, better bread than beer.
During day?
It's also on Yom Tov?
I think so, but I'm not sure. Now, when it comes to the day, on the day you're allowed to make Kiddush on Shar Mashkim, Chamar Medina. Kiddush is still better, no question about it. Wine is still better, no question. But you could be yotze with Chamar Medina, and Chamar Medina includes mashke. However, according to the Alter Rebbe, you must have a revius and drink a roiv revius, because less than that is not a shear. Alter Rebbe does not agree with the Taz who says that you can have a small amount of mashke because mashke is normally drank in small amounts, and therefore small amount is good enough. Alter Rebbe does not hold to that. So therefore, you have to have a revius and drink a majority of a revius.
What was the reason? Because of the day or the night regarding having kiddush much?
Because some say that you're not yotze kiddush on anything besides wine, and the night, which is a much stricter kiddush, it's d'oraisa and so on. So you're not allowed to make another mashkim because of the opinion says that you're actually not yotze on other mashkim besides wine.
Because like on Simchas Torah and Shmini Atzeres in the community that I go to, a lot of people make Kiddush at night on Mashka, so that could be incorrect.
I don't actually have a proof. My assumption is that Yom Tov and Shabbos is the same, because generally the halachas of Kiddush and so on are the same as Yom Tov and Shabbos, but I can't say that I know 100%.
How can we, is it possible to find out for sure?
When we get to Hilchos Yom Tov, then you'll ask me again. Until no obligation to be able to answer all those questions. Baruch Hashem, I have the ability to say I don't know.
Will we get to that before Simchas Torah and Shmini Atzeres?
I don't know. All the rabbis in the world, I don't know if I'll get an answer to that. Okay. The point is, there's no question that it's definitely not lechatchila. No question. Even on Yom Tov, there's no question not lechatchila. And for all those big Lubavitchers, the Rebbe himself, the whole basis why the Lubavitch is so strict on saying it on wine, besides the halachic component, which is for everybody. But in Lubavitch, everybody says, what do you mean the Rebbe made it on wine? The Rebbe, in the middle of the heart attack, when they brought grape juice, insisted that Kiddush has to be made on wine. So if he insisted on wine over grape juice, when grape juice could be considered wine according to some, how much more so wine over mashka? You understand what I'm saying? And that was Yom Tov, that wasn't Shabbos. Yes.
For the chips on the meal, you have to say per bracha. But let's say somebody, you're 6 for the meal, they bring you pay with hot dog, the bread, the chips. That's your meal.
Could be. It could be.
Could
be. We're going to learn about that sort of thing. It could be that the way you eat it makes it secondary. We're going to learn about it. Maybe an apple salad, some say, is covered. They have apple, they have something called the Waldorf salad where they mix apples into salad. Some say that's covered by moitzi because you're eating it in a way that it's a dish in the meal. Okay, my friends. In any case, another thing we see from the Alter Rebbe here is that in order for the wine to cover other drinks, it has to either be on the table in front of you or you have to have it in mind specifically. If it was not on the table in front of you, you didn't have it in mind, it's not covered. That means even if it's brought to the table before you finish drinking wine, you're still drinking the wine that you made the hagafen on, and they bring you other drinks, doesn't make a difference. It's not covered.
So
Yeah.
the Mishnah, even though it's covered, is it?
No, I'm not talking about Lechem Mishnah. Lechem Mishnah, once you've made Hamoitzi, all drinks are covered by Hamoitzi anyway. I'm talking about if you had a meal without Hamoitzi, and you made hagafen, so you covered the drinks, but only the drinks that are in front of you, or that you had in mind. Or, I mean, the truth is, if you're at a meal of somebody else, whatever he had in mind is included. But if you're in your own house, and you're at the table, and you have drinks there, whatever drinks are there, whatever you have in mind. But if you decide to go get something else, which you didn't think about and you wasn't on the table, you have to make another bracha on that. Shahakal.
What if it's a geffen? What if it's another wine?
No, another wine not. Unless you finish drinking wine and you decided I'm finished with wine. Otherwise, as long as you're drinking wine and you bring more wine, you don't have to make another geffen. We're going to get to it, but that's the...
Hey, can you clarify that for me? I'm a little bit confused with that. So you're saying that if it wasn't on the table, it wasn't covered with the bracha, you're saying?
If it wasn't on the table and you didn't have it in mind. Meaning to say,
Both
even
variables have to be in that situation.
no, either variable, not both, either variable. If it was on the table, it's covered, even if you didn't have it in mind, because it's assumed that if it's on the table, it's included. And if you had it in the kitchen, not on the table, but you knew that you're going to bring it out, that's also covered.
Okay.
But if you didn't, it's neither on the table nor in your mind. You have to make a bracha
On the
on the drinks.
Has to be specific, or I say I'm going to say Kiddush, wine, and later I'm going to drink something else. But I should be specific, I'm going to drink Coke, I'm going to drink juice.
Yeah, yeah. Good question.
Huh?
Before a vote.
Yeah.
Yeah, do we have to remember? I didn't know, maybe I want to have a shower for.
How much specific, maybe we have to have that in mind.
Breira. There's something in the Gemara that comes up very often. The sugya of yesh breira or ein breira. Can you say now, whatever I choose later, I had in mind now? That's what you're asking now. You're saying to yourself, I don't know what I'm going to drink. Whatever I drink should be considered having had it in mind. L'chura, it works. It would seem that it works. It would seem.
If that's your normal way, during your household, drinks will come out at some point.
Right.
Like one of my guests will come and bring something. Like I wasn't expecting this
And
person.
you know, wine is not going to be the drink for the Kiddush. I mean, that's something else. If there's enough to drink Kiddush, you have to have mind every time the Kiddush, you have to do something else.
The simple answer is yes. That's a simple answer.
But we usually don't. I mean, most people don't.
Most people don't what?
Don't keep it in mind. They know that, what do you call it?
Well, if you're going to eat,
The wine covers.
Can you be general, like, in
No.
general, say whatever other things I'm gonna be drinking, it should be covered.
if you're going to make hamotzi, then you're covered anyway.
Right.
By the
And
drinks.
before a vote.
Before hamotzi, you have to either have it on the table or have it in mind.
So wine, in terms of Kiddush, covers other drinks. What happens if you're not having Kiddush? You're just having a glass of wine.
I didn't say in terms of kiddush.
Right?
Al Rebbe did not say the word kiddush. Al Rebbe said wine is the head of all drinks, and therefore it covers drinks. It has nothing to do with kiddush. It so happens that kiddush is a good example of this halacha, but it's not about kiddush per se. What's your question? I'm just looking into the question that you asked about drinks that you normally have, but you didn't specifically have them in mind. ואורך הנמצא אצל בעל הבייס, כוסף וגויס יוקי ואגר, שנחשב שדייק ליפטו כל מה שיהיה לבעל הבייס. Yeah? A guest, שומעים? A guest by a house, it's considered that whatever the בעל הבייס brings, it's as if he had in mind. A person who usually drinks other drinks, it seems from the Sharat Tzion that it's as if he had them in mind.
If he's a guest in somebody else's house?
These are two different things. Number one, if you're a guest in somebody's house, whatever he brings is if you had in mind. Number two, if you usually drink certain drinks after your kiddush or after your wine or whatever, it's also considered as if you had it in mind. So that's correct. Who asked it? If that's something you normally have. I mean,
No, he said at home you would normally have, but if you go to someone else's house, you can assume that you're also gonna have that?
no, you assume you're going to have what he brings you.
Okay.
You don't assume you're going to have your favorite drink just because it's your favorite drink. If he brings it to you, b'vakasha. But if you ask him, oh, by the way, do you have A&W root beer or whatever you want, and you didn't have it in mind, and he didn't bring it on his own, you asked him for it, that's not going to be covered. Yeah, that's what he brings from Shevet HaLevi. Okay. We continue and we say, Bein mi bracha acharena nifter birchos HaNehenin. Just like the wine, the bracha on the wine beforehand covers the other drinks, the bracha on the wine afterwards, ala gefen, covers the bracha after drinks. Even if you had to make a separate bracha rishona, for example, you did not plan to drink these drinks, and you didn't have them on the table, so you had to make a separate shahakal on them. Nevertheless, when you say ala gefen, it covers them as well.
All the other drinks.
All the other drinks.
They're not geffen, but they were covered under the Kiddush.
Even if they weren't covered, that's the Kiddush. If they're covered under the Kiddush, yes, for sure. Not only that, even if they weren't covered by the Haggafen, and you had to say a separate shahakal on them, because you didn't have them in mind, they weren't there, nevertheless, for the after bracha, it's good enough. What about if he drank them before he drank the wine?
If you drank a drink before your wine?
If you drank a drink before the wine, and then you drank the wine, does the ala gefen, why is it linked?
No,
Yes, you should pull it in.
But why is it linked?
You saying before the Kiddush?
What links it?
You saying before the Kiddush?
Oh, you mean because the other drinks are covered? You're saying the other drinks are covered by the ala gefen, so then it counts together.
So if you had the drink before, and then.
I don't know if that's true though, because the other, no, but yesterday I was talking about things that are not covered by the hamoitzi. So because they're not covered by the hamoitzi, so they're covered by this bracha before, and then the benching covers them, so it covers them. But here the drinks after hagafen are covered by the hagafen. So there's no link anymore. You know what I'm saying? That's that. The drinks after are covered by the hagafen. So I don't.
So
It's
with
not
that
really a
drink that
link.
was straight, maybe with that drink that you drank before the Haggafen, don't you have to say Bracha Chana for that one before you can do anything else? And
Maybe,
also, and you're using that same logic with
Maybe.
yesterday as well.
maybe, I
You should
don't know.
Bracha Chana before you do the actual.
Maybe, I don't know.
Assuming the drink before is enough quantity to say on the bracha.
Yeah. I definitely saw somebody discussing it today, but I don't remember what they said. Anybody? Did anybody say anything about this?
Can they repeat the question?
My question is, if you were drinking other drinks, and then you started drinking wine, and you're going to say ala gefen on the wine, does that cover you for the drinks that you drank before you said the bar pri gefen?
Did you drink?
I think I saw this morning that it does. Everybody thinks that it does.
Right. You drink the first drinks after you drank the wine?
Bavadia says that it does. So here he brings from the Alter Rebbe that it does not. Shulchan Aruch Harav Reish Ayin Beis Yud Gimel. No, that's something else. Sorry, there's something else. There's something else. This is something else completely. So you're saying, according to Bavadia, it does not cover it.
I was saying it does.
Bavadia says it does cover it?
The Alter Rebbe doesn't.
No, the Alter was talking about something else. I got it wrong. Bavadia says what? Referral that it covers it?
I don't have my safer, so I don't want to say it again. But I'll check it and I'll send it over tomorrow.
Okay, I'm not seeing it here, so I don't know. I don't know the answer to that question. Okay, my friends. What he does say here in the name of the Alter Rebbe, which is interesting, is as follows. You made Kiddush. The Kiddush is going to be covered by the benching. Before you washed, you had a drink. Alter Rebbe says you have to make a bar nefashos on that drink.
Before you say Hamoitzi.
Before you say Hamoitzi.
Who says this? Alter Rebbe?
Alter Rebbe. But why didn't you say the swore of the link? Emmanuel's question.
You don't make the wine, that's not Kiddush. Right?
No.
No, it is Kiddush.
It is Kiddush.
You made Kiddush,
Right.
and then you had a drink, and then you washed. The benching is going to cover you for the wine.
But if you had another drink after, I would say, shouldn't that link?
No, that doesn't link. Because that drink is covered by Hamoitzi. The drinks after Hamoitzi are covered by Hamoitzi. So that's not a link. But Emmanuel's question before applies over here. Why don't we say the Kiddush wine is covering the Bracha Rishon on this drink? The benching is covering the Bracha Rishon on the wine. So it should be included, and therefore, through this link, it should be covered in the benching. I don't know. He brings us from the Alter Rebbe. Reishayin Beis Yud Gimel, Rabbi Green. Reishayin Beis Yud Gimel. Give me a moment. Let me just track this down. Here it is. Reishayin Beis Yud Gimel, 272:13. Ain't tzarich l'varach bracha chayin al kodesh al kiddush. You don't have to make a bracha after after kiddush. Bein shalai ben shem yom, whether night or day. Bein triyam bein sharmashka, whether it's wine or other drinks. V'shar kiddush tzarich asur, because kiddush is part of the meal. It's a necessity of the meal. Okay, the cup is secondary to the meal. And if the bracha is mashach hasuda and it's covered by the benching of the meal, kilush hasuda as if you had it during the meal. Now in parentheses, the Alter Rebbe says, if you drank before the meal, besides kiddush. If it's wine, you don't have to make a after bracha for the reason explained elsewhere, because wine opens the appetite, so it's covered. If it's other drinks, you have to make an after bracha. Unless you're going to make an alagefen on the cup of benching after benching, but it's not covered by the benching. I don't know the pshat here. I don't know what's not linked through the Bari Gofen. Okay. We continue and we say, we said that. If you drink less than a shir revius, in which case you don't have to make the bracha afterwards. And you did drink a revius of other drinks. No problem. You make a bar nefashos after them. Even though you didn't say shahakol. You didn't say shahakol because it was covered by a gofen. You're not saying al gefen because you're not having a shear of wine. So you said bar nefashos. This is a rule, my friends. If you said hamoitzi on a meal, and for some reason you didn't end up eating a kazayas of bread during the meal, which you shouldn't really do, but let's say it happened, you have to make the after bracha that is appropriate for all those foods. Ala mechia, bar nefashos, ala gefen, whatever you ate.
So if you eat a certain amount of bread, you only what do you say for the bread that you had?
Nothing.
Nothing.
You have to have a shear to make a bracha. The bench, you have to have a kazayas. Any bracha achron, you have to have a kazayas.
So in other words, you have to avoid that.
Of course. I mean, in terms of bread, you have to avoid it, because when you have less than a kazayas, it's a doubt if it covers the other brachas in the meal. In general, you don't have to avoid it. If you have less than a kazayas for sure, it's okay. You don't have to bench. It's fine. There's no obligation to dafka have a kazayas. But the point is that when it comes to benching in a meal, it makes things complicated. Okay, my friends, I want to go over some stuff that I mentioned in yesterday's shir, and we didn't clarify it fully. So, if you want to look at the notes, I wrote it up a little bit. The Mishnah Berurah brings many achronim who hold that mezonos covers all foods, similar to shahakol, besides water and salt. I mentioned that the other day. I just wanted to write it down so you'll have that source there in case you want to look it up. The Rambam holds, number 2, all grains that are peeled and cooked are mezonos even if they don't stick together. Right? We had a machlekes about that. The Rambam is the one who says it's mezonos. Now, Rabbeinu Yoina says that rice does not need to stick together to be mezonos, even though he holds other grains do. Beis Yosef paskins like this, as does the Yalkut Yosef. Practically speaking, that means, you have it?
Yeah. No, that's different. Is it?
10 to 21. So another one.
That was yesterday's. I sent one out today at like 7. So here's the thing. Sfardim say mezonos on rice, even if they don't stick together, because that's how the Beis Yosef passes like Rabbeinu Yoina. Now the Ramah says that it has to stick together. However, the Mishnah Berurah says that in light of the fact that the Rambam says that as long as it's peeled, it's always mezonos, any grain, not dafka rice. Plus Rabbeinu Yoina holds that rice, peeled or not peeled, as long as it sticks together, even if it doesn't stick together, it's mezonos. He holds that rice is different. So you have like a sfek, you have like a double doubt And therefore, he says a person who makes mezonos and rice that doesn't stick together, even Ashkenazim, lo hifsid. It's not the end of the world. Especially in light of the fact, like I mentioned, that he says that some say mezonos covers other brachas. So, in terms of what's considered peeled rice, Rabbi Badner points out, as does the Sefer Zitza Bracha, that even whole grain rice is considered peeled rice. Because when the Pri Megadim spoke about peeled rice, he was not talking about white rice. They did not have that going back 300 years ago in Europe. All they had was brown rice. So peeled is that outer peel that is taken
So
off.
all rice is mezonos?
According to the Sfardim, for sure. According to the Mishnah Berurah, if it doesn't stick together, if you say mezonos, it's okay. It's okay. According to Alter Rebbe, rice has a separate issue, which is that it might be doichan, which is supposed to be adama, and out of a doubt, you should say shahak.
What's the something on rice for Chabad?
Chabad, either during a meal, or have it after having a mezonos and a hadama food, or all else fails, say shahak. Okay, now there was something that I found a few years ago, or last time I taught this, and in my Google searches, I could not come up with it today, so I cannot give you a source, but I do remember finding it, and it's not made up. And that is that there is a machlokes rishonim about what is oiras and what is doichan in terms of millet or rice, Rashi and Tosfos, and the Vilna Gaon came to the conclusion that Tosfos is right, and oiras is rice, and not millet. How did he come to that conclusion? Very simple. There's a halacha in Choshen Mishpat, and it's I think it's a Mishnah even in Bava Metzia. If you give a person grain to watch, so there's a certain amount that is considered normal for the mice to consume every year. And therefore, he's not considered negligent, or if you're not sure how much went missing, you can assume that much went missing. And it gives a different shear for oiras and doichan. So the Vilna Gaon said, it's no problem. We'll do an experiment. I'm going to take rice, I'm going to take millet, I'm going to leave it around for a year, and we'll see how much the mice ate of one, and how much the mice ate of the other. And that's how we'll decide if oiras is rice or millet. And if doichan is rice or millet. And he did the experiment, and oiras and the rice went missing the amount that the Mishnah says oiras, and doichan went missing the amount that the millet went missing the amount that it says doichan. That's how he passed in like Tosfos. It's an interesting bit of halacha trivia, or non-trivia, I should say. Okay, in terms of the Mishnah Berurah, who paskins that you can say mezonos on rice, notwithstanding the opinion of Rashi that oiras means millet, because he says, first of all, most Rishonim agree with Tosfos. Second of all, mezonos covers most foods according to many achronim, like I mentioned earlier, besides salt and water. And finally, he does mention the opinion that I said yesterday, which is that of Rabbeinu Yonah. Rabbeinu Yonah says all grains that are filling, such as corn, quinoa, all foods, all grains that are considered filling foods, are mezonos. According to him, oiras is just an example. It's not a unique thing. It's an example of a grain that is filling, but is not from the Shivas Aminim, and therefore he says, based on those three reasons, to say mezonos.
I have a question.
Yes.
What if some of these items are mixed with another item,
For example, give me an example.
rice and corn?
In terms of ingredients,
The bracha.
in terms of ingredients, so you go by the majority. Different than the grains of wheat, barley, spelt, and rye, oats and spelt and rye. Those are considered more important. And even if they're a minority, as long as you have a kazayas within 6 eggs worth, we're going to see there it would be mezonos, or how moitzi, depending on what it is. But when it comes to other grains, even mezonos grains like rice, they are nullified in the majority.
So today there's rice and quinoa mixed together.
Cooked together or cooked separately and then mixed together.
Cooked together.
So you go by majority?
They're so small, which is the majority.
You're not sure?
Chocolate.
No, not chocolate. You're not sure? Separate it out. Separate it out and make a bracha on one separate than the other. When it's mixed together, you make a bracha on one, it becomes a question.
It's mixed together, that's what it is.
I'm saying, so you separate it out and make the bracha on one separate and the other separate. Or if you have other foods there that are...
They will cover that.
Yeah, but anyway, according to Chabad, anyway, you're not gonna, it's not gonna be so simple. Because the rice could be mezonos. So anyway, you'll have to make a mezonos adama. So you cover it anyway.
What do we find?
If you're Chabad, life is simple. Because you go with Alter Rebbe, that's it. I mean, it's also simple if you're Sephardic. You go by the Yaakov Yosef, most Sephardic. And if you're Ashkenaz, you go by the Mishnah Berurah. Life is always simple. You just have to know who to go by, that's all. I'm teaching you all the opinions, so you should know for your edification. You should know.
And our confusion, yeah.
Yes.
I thought I knew something. No.
It's bad for us people who are eclectic.
Yeah, what can I say?
Yeah.
Can you repeat what Dr. Rebbe said regarding rice?
According to Alter Rebbe, rice is a doubt if it's mezonos or ha'adam. So you have three options. You can either eat it during a meal of hamoitzi, or you can say mezonos on a mezonos food and adam on an adama food and then eat the rice. Or if all else fails, you can simply say shahakal on the rice because shahakal covers both adama and mezonos.
Okay, we go over that already, no?
Yeah.
On the...
That was number 11, I think. Pretty sure it was number 11.
Hágame segunda, yeah.
Okay. Now, yesterday we discussed a little bit about Rice Krispies and rice cakes. So I looked it up a little bit. And Rice Krispies are cooked. They're physically cooked before they're toasted. And therefore, the correct bracha, for those that say mezonos on rice, again, for those that say mezonos on rice, the correct bracha on Rice Krispies is mezonos. Those that don't are right back where you started from. You'll have to say mezonos on one thing and adam on something else. Or what can I say?
You can say hamotzi that covers it in soda, right? The rice.
Sorry?
Rice could be covered in the soda.
Absolutely, no question about it.
That third option, saying shackle, is acceptable.
It's unacceptable. It's acceptable. The Alter Rebbe says a Yirei Shamayim will have it during a meal, which means it's not the best, but it's acceptable.
If Rice Krispies are cooked, why doesn't Bishul apply to them? Bishul Yisrael.
Not everything that is cooked has a issue of Bishul Yisrael. It has to be fit for a king. When's the last time you saw Queen Elizabeth eating Rice Krispies?
No, but isn't that the machlekes, whether it's the food itself or the way that it's prepared? That's why like potato chips and tuna fish, there's a machlekes.
No, it's the way it's prepared.
What do you mean? So then what's the problem with potato chips and tuna fish? No,
tuna fish is an important fish.
Canned tuna fish would never be on a king's table.
I don't know.
And potato chips would never be on a king's table either. I thought that was the whole machlekes, that is it the food item itself, meaning potatoes, or is it the way that the food is prepared? And that's why there's a machlekes with potato.
I don't know. I don't think so. I think the main halacha is that it goes by the way it's prepared.
But
I think the main halacha it goes by the way it's prepared.
So then what's the issue with potato chips?
I don't know.
It's regular compared to what Pringles and regular potato chips.
There's different issues in potato chips. It's not just about that. I'm sorry?
Is that because how it's prepared? What's his question? What's Ariel's question?
He wants to know why some people are machmer with potato chips if kings don't eat potato chips, at least not when people are watching. So that's
They
the
don't call
question.
it side
French
dish.
fries.
Yeah, they say chips and.
That's what they do.
Okay.
I remember that George H.W. Bush liked eating pork rinds, so I guess that's just as bad as potato chips.
Yeah. Yeah. In America, there's no rules. Anybody can become president, as we see today.
Yeah. Well, you think you can't, there's a difference though. Right?
Yeah.
Be rich.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's life.
That really helps.
Okay, rice cakes are toasted. Rice cakes are actually not cooked before. They're toasted and they're puffed. And therefore, some say they are mezonos. I said mezonos? No, some say they're hadama. Sorry. Some say they're hadama. Others, Rabbi Yashiv says that since they do stick together, so they are considered mezonos, even though they're technically toasted. So that's a machlekes. That's a machlekes, and Rav Deitch said that he believes them to be the same as cooked rice. So basically, according to Alter Rebbe, he holds that you have to go through the whole thing like you do with other brachas. Although Rabbi Yisrael Yaakov Fisher, although Shalom, who was the head of the Badatz at one point in Yerushalayim, he held that rice cakes are for sure shahakal, because he considered them to be changed from their original form. So there you have a third opinion. Adama, shahakal, mezonos. In case you weren't confused enough.
So if you say the wrong bracha, you can always find a
That's almost always true. The Mishnah Berurah says, the question was yesterday asked about using mezonos for lechem mishnah. The Mishnah Berurah says not to use mezonos for lechem mishnah. However,
What was the last part?
if you can use mezonos for lechem mishnah.
So the Mishnah Berurah says no.
No. Talking about you have a challah and you want to put in a cake for the second challah.
Ah, okay.
The Mishnah Berurah says no. However, if you have no other option, this Ketshuvah says that you should at least do that, but he recommends that you eat from it, and that way, if you're full during the course of the meal, plus you ate from it, maybe it's considered a moitzi anyway. We said yesterday about covering Kiddush, covering mezonos during Kiddush, so it is a machlekes. The Kitzur Shulchan Aruch says you have to. Eishel Avram, who is a commentator on the Shulchan Aruch, Chacha Rav says you don't have to. It's only bread, because bread is considered such an important food, and that's why you have to cover it. He says does not apply to mezonos.
Some people, because you cover it with mezonos, huh?
That's the opinion of Kitzur Shulchan Aruch, correct. A good thing. Okay, my friends. The Kaf HaChaim says, listen to this. Kaf HaChaim says if you're eating mezonos before a meal, and then you wash, and you didn't say ala mechia yet, he says go ahead and bench. Don't say ala mechia separately. This is the difference of the Alter Rebbe. The Alter Rebbe says you say ala mechia, even if you realize at the end, for benching, you still say ala mechia. Now, the Mishnah Berurah brings down a very interesting thing, which the Alter Rebbe, it's hard to say that he disagrees with, because it's a logical thing. We're going to see in the next parak that there are many types of cakes and cookies that are doubtful if they're hamoitzi or mezonos. In practice, we say mezonos on them, and we say ala michya on them. But really, there's a machlokes if they're hamoitzi or mezonos or benching or ala michya. So the Mishnah Berurah says, if you had those foods, and now you're going to wash, just don't say ala michya. Wash, eat, and bench. Because the same possibility that they're supposed to be ala michya, maybe they're supposed to be benching. So, and you're going to be benching anyway. So why should you say ala michya? Just bench. Cover them with benching. It's a logical thing. The Alter Rebbe doesn't say otherwise. I mean, here he says to say ala michne even right before benching, but he's not talking about those breads necessarily. He's talking about mezonos in general. So that's a logical thing, it would seem to be. Okay, foods eaten between Kiddush or washing covered by benching according to many poskim. I mentioned this before. Okay, the rest I think I covered while I was going over it. Okay, we begin.
What do you say that BW means there? Foods eaten BW?
Between.
Oh, between.
Yes, it's the age of Rosh Tevis. Okay, we continue with chapter 2, and we say, chapter 2, my friends, is discussing foods that are mezonos, but are not for sure mezonos. There are 3 categories that we're going to learn about. There's something called lechem gomer, and that is for sure bread. That's what people eat as bread. And that is hamoitzi and birchos HaNehenin. Then there is something called lechem she'ene gomer, which means it is bread, but it's not usually eaten as the main part of the meal. But it is bread. And this has a unique status. If you eat it in small quantities, it's mezonos. If you eat it in large quantities, it becomes hamoitzi. Cake, pizza. I mean, pizza maybe is bread. Cake, cookies, pretzels.
Cookies, you could become amazing.
Absolutely.
What's the amount?
We're going to learn. Because basically, halachically, these are considered bread. But because they're sweet, or they're crunchy, or they have fillings, we're going to learn different opinions, whatever it is. So it's not normal to make a meal out of it. But if you did make a meal out of it in a large quantity, then, normal or not, it becomes normal. It becomes normal at that point when you have a large amount.
What determines satisfaction? Like what?
Yeah, exactly.
Quantity and satisfaction. Different opinions, and Alter Rebbe is going to make a nice combination of those factors. Okay, so then there's something called mezonos gomer. Mezonos gomer means something that no matter how much you eat, it's not bread. Pasta, for example, it's mezonos no matter what, because it doesn't have the qualifications of being bread. Okay, so those are the 3 general categories.
Let's prepare with juices and water.
That is machlokas. There are some types of breads that it's doubtful if they're considered regular bread or if they're considered lechem she'ene gomer, not regular bread. No, they're for sure not mezonos gomer. It may be lechem gomer, it may be lechem she'ene gomer, but it's for sure not mezonos gomer. In other words, if you have the amount that is considered enough to make it a meal, then it's for sure hamoitzi.
So potato bread is potato. I don't know how potato bread is.
No, potato bread is not a mezonos.
It's hamoitzi.
No, it's shahakol.
So it's shahakol.
In order for it to be mezonos or hamoitzi, it has to be from the 5 grains: wheat, barley, oat, spelt, and rye. If it's any other grain, I was going to say if it's any other grain, I'm going to take it back. If it's rice, it's also mezonos, but it's burned nefashos afterwards. But if it's any other grain besides those 5 and rice, it's shahakol.
Potato is shahakol.
Yeah. All those Pesach cakes.
Yeah, Pesach, yeah.
All the Pesach cakes, unless you keep your brachs, you can assume all Pesach cakes are shahakol. Okay, so with no further ado, here we go. Birchos HaNehenin is an obligation of the Torah. 1 second, we have to make a brief interruption and figure out what's the prospect for Ma'ariv, because we have to cancel on all our people otherwise. We only have 4 people here. How many people did you say you have coming?
I have to confirm right now if it was like 3 or 4. I would
3 or 4 would
one
be
of the
great.
Bachman from Dorish.
Rafael, did you have anybody coming?
No, but I can come. Like, I can come. 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 I can come
You can
I
come.
can
Well,
try
don't
to-
start the car yet because we only have 4 here.
Yeah.
Michael Ben Shatrit said he would come, and Elchanan said he would come. That's not 6. With you, Rafael, is not 7. And if you have any Dorish kids, let us know. Okay. Birchos HaMazon min HaTorah. Birchos HaMazon min HaTorah. Einay ela k'sha'achal pas kedei sviyah. Benching min HaTorah is only if you ate enough to be satisfied. Moshe Kossel, like the pasuk says, "Ve'achalta v'savata uveirachta." You will eat, you will be satisfied, and you will bench. The Chachamim tiknu levorach afilu al kazayis. The Chachamim said that you should bench even after eating a kazayis. Like tiknu ela belechem shedech b'neilam lekvei suda Allah. They only established this on a bread that is normal to have a meal on. Listen carefully. So when it comes to eating enough bread to be satisfied, it's clear in the Alter Rebbe that you should make that bracha even on something that is, you should make that bracha even on something that is not normal for people to make a meal out of. Because you're satisfied, you have to bench by Torah law. When it comes to benching on a kazayas, which is only by rabbinic law, so the Chachamim only made it on types of bread that is normal to make a meal out of. Types of bread that are not normally made a meal out of, like snack foods, cakes and pretzels and cookies, whatever. So the Chachamim said, just make a ala michya and so on.
It has nothing to do with how it's made.
Absolutely, it has to do. Everything has to do with how
Okay,
it's
so-
made. What do you mean by that?
But if you,
Everything has to do with how it's made. How it's made will dictate whether it's normal to have a meal out of it or not.
Any bread, if I have a kazayis of bread, a slice of bread.
That is normal bread, of course. Normal bread, normal challah, normal food, breads that are normally eaten.
Like a wrap.
Anything that's normally eaten as a bread is hamotzi. If you, it's hamotzi and then you can have a kazayis. Anil? Question?
oh yeah, I just had a, what does that Rosh Hashanah mean, base aleph? Lechem shederach,
B'nai Adam.
something like.
B'nai Adam. People. B'nai Adam means people. But the types of breads that will be explained, that it's not usual to make a meal out of them. We don't make a hamotzi and benching on them. Rather, you start with mezonos and you finish with mein shalish. Unless you eat an amount of a meal, which is the amount that people make a normal meal out of, which is the normal meal in the morning and the evening. Normally what people eat that amount of regular bread. Sometimes these breads, when you eat that amount, sometimes then they will make a meal out of it. Therefore, even if you ate it as a non-permanent meal, and you're not satisfied, his opinion is nullified. So, my friends, one more time. When you have regular bread, all you need is a kazayas to bench. When you have bread that is normally eaten as a snack food, if you have less than the normal amount of people to have a meal on, it's mezonos and ala mechya. But if you have the amount that is normal for people to make a meal out of it, then it becomes hamotzi and benching. Because sometimes people will make a meal out of those snack breads. If they're hungry, sometimes it might happen.
So if I know I'm going to eat a lot of pretzels, then I should wash and then say hamotzi.
Exactly, depending on how much. We're going to see in the very next seif how much. But that is correct.
Because people tend to eat, when you start eating pretzels, I notice people eat a lot of them. So how many does it take?
We're going to see pretzels, cakes, cookies, All of those things become questionable when you have certain amounts, as we're going to see.
If you know you're gonna eat less than the inside, from the beginning, you still say the.
After the before bracha, yeah. The before bracha, you say about how much you can eat.
So if I'm gonna have a meal with blintzes, the shvus, I have to wash?
I think blintzes are mezonos gomer. I'm not mistaken. I think
Having such
blintzes.
an amount.
I think blitzes are mezonos gomer because they're thin and their batter is thin. I believe they're mezonos gomer, meaning to say no matter how much you eat, they remain mezonos. If I'm not mistaken,
Because of the consistency of the dough?
both the consistency and the way it's prepared, so that it's thin. It's a thin consistency, and it spreads out, so it doesn't get up. But that wrap is a thick consistency. A wrap is thick, you know what I'm saying? Like matzah. Matzah is also thin, but the dough is thick. Okay. Uvashir zeh rabu boyadeas, my friends. In this shir, there are many opinions. Now, what you're going to learn now is the Alter Rebbe's opinion. I'm going to give you the opinions of the Mishnah Berurah and the Yalkut Yosef soon for your information. But first, we're going to learn the Alter Rebbe's opinion. It's a little bit complicated, so you have to pay attention. Here goes. I have me plus 2 for Ma'ariv. Okay, that's good. You have anybody?
I'm trying to call him right now, just wait. Answer.
The three of you not voting yes?
I did
So
not balance.
there's 4 in total there. There's 4 that he's with him?
2 plus him is 3, but I have Elchanan coming also. And Machal. And Machal.
Yeah,
We just need one more.
I'll stay.
Is he coming?
No, even without you, we need one more.
Huh? Oh.
Even besides you, we need one more. Okay, my friends. Listen carefully to Beis. Uvashir zeh Rabbi Boyadeis. There are many opinions about this shir. Ulamaisa yesh linoig. Lamaisa, here's what you should do. Okay, before we learn this shir, I want to explain that the Alter Rebbe gives shiurim, and they are based on 3 general shiurim. One shir is 21 eggs worth. It's a huge amount because that's what they ate in the desert. The volume of 21 eggs.
Of what? Volume of what?
The volume of bread of 21 eggs worth. Why? Because in the desert they had man. The man was an asir seifa, which was 43 1/3 eggs. So 21 and change eggs is half of that. That's what they had for the meal in the morning and the evening. Some say that's the shear. Some say the shear is 6 eggs worth because that was considered the meal for the rich people. Some say it's 4 eggs worth because the poor people, they would have a smaller amount of 4 eggs. Those are the basic shiurim that we work with. But the Alter Rebbe adds in another factor, and that is the factor of a person's own satisfaction. Because the Ravid says that it goes by you. If you're satisfied, then have you ate, you're satisfied. You have to bench b'daraisa. Who cares about the shear? You understand? So because of that additional factor of satisfaction, the Alter Rebbe comes up with an approach to these 3 shiur. Okay, here we go. Kol shoichel mikashesh beitzin beinani yisulemayim. If you eat more than the amount of 6 eggs, ad chatzi asor v'lo yad b'char, up till half an isaron. Isaron is 43 1/3 eggs, so half of that is 21 and change eggs. If he's not satisfied, he ate more than 6 eggs worth, but he's not satisfied, well, some say you have to make a motzi anyway, because when you eat that amount, I mean, that's a meal, regardless of your personal satisfaction. On the other hand, he's not satisfied. Maybe it's not enough to make it a meal, so you have to wash on another piece of bread. wash on a regular piece of bread, have a kazayas of it, and you'll be good. Because then you'll be able to wash and bench and cover. If you're going to eat 21 eggs worth and change, whether you're full or not, you have to bench. Anything other than that is crazy.
Guaranteed to be full.
You can wash and bench on that alone.
Rabbi, it's over 1,000 grams.
Yeah, it's pretty heavy.
But the satisfaction has to come from the bread.
We're going to see about that. The moichel pachos mikashesh beitzim v'lo yisavim mimenu mevorach birchos mevorach boim mezonos mein shalish. If you're going to eat less than 6 eggs and you're not satisfied, then you make mezonos and mein shalish.
It's after.
Mezonos before and mein shalish afterwards. V'im saveya mimenu. If you are satisfied, as long as you ate more than 4 eggs, if you're satisfied, you can wash and bench on that alone. You don't have to have any other bread. But if you ate less than 4 eggs, if you are satisfied from that shear alone, you have to make on the kazayas of a different piece of bread, hamoitzi, and then benching. Okay, let's say it in other words. Let's talk about satisfied first versus not satisfied with all the shiur. If you're satisfied and it's less than 4 eggs, the Alter Rebbe says, you have to have a piece of regular bread. If you're satisfied that it's more than 4 eggs worth, you can wash and bench on that cake alone, or whatever type of mezonos it is alone. Wash before, if you expect to be satisfied.
How do you know when to be exactly?
Yeah, if you expect to be satisfied, you wash. You make sure to eat enough until you're satisfied. As long as it's more than 4 eggs worth, you don't have to worry about taking another piece of bread. Now, if you decide in the middle to eat more and become satisfied, we're going to get to that later. But for now, let's just talk about if you knew what you were doing. So that's that. In a case where you're not satisfied, if it's less than 6 eggs, you could for sure make mezonos, no problem. Less than 6 eggs, you can make mezonos, no problem. If it's more than 6 eggs, then you must eat another piece of bread to be able to say hamoitzi. If it's 21 eggs worth, you make hamoitzi anyway.
4, 6, and
21, yeah.
Yeah,
3 levels. And now let's talk about those levels again in different words, just to come at it in different angles. If you're eating less than 4 eggs, not satisfied, mezonos and alamichya. Yes, satisfied, make a bracha of hamoitzi and other bread. Between 4 and 6, not satisfied, again, mezonos and alamichya. Yes, satisfied, it's enough to make hamoitzi on this food itself. Above 6, no, above 6, satisfied, hamoitzi on this itself. Not satisfied, still you need another piece of bread. 21, no matter what, it is hamoitzi. Okay, this is according to the Alter Rebbe. Now, if you want to know the other opinions, I'm going to send out a chart of the other opinions. Let me get to it. The Mishnah Berurah holds, if you're eating more than the volume of 4 eggs, you should wash on another slice of bread. If you're eating the amount of an average meal, which he doesn't say what an average meal is because it really depends on the place and the time that you're in, then you can wash and say hamoitzi on that bread alone, no matter how much you're eating. And this is the Reb Shlomo Zalman Auerbach, by the way, is quoted in the Brachas book by Bodner as to saying that nowadays the size of 4 eggs is a normal meal. So according to him, if you're going to eat that, The Mishnah Berurah would hold you can say hamotzi on that itself. But the Mishnah Berurah also says that we judge each group of people differently, so that women, perhaps their size of a normal meal is less. Old people perhaps is less. Children perhaps is less. So he doesn't give an amount. He just says that it could change. The Yalkut Yosef says, if eating more than the volume of 4 eggs, one must wash on this bread alone, but it's better to wash on regular bread, unless you're eating the average meal. It was pretty much the same as the Mishnah Berurah. No, the Mishnah Berurah says, Mishnah Berurah says between 4 eggs and the average meal, you should have another slice of bread. Yalkut Yosef says it's enough to wash on the bread alone, but it's better to wash on another piece of bread. There's a famous teaching in the name of Moshe Feinstein, and it goes like this. 1 slice of pizza is mezonos. 3 slices is hamotzi. 2 slices, it depends if you're full or not. That's what I heard as a kid, like everybody repeated this bit of information. So I never saw it printed, although I did hear it from a good source. I heard it from by Gershon Bess in Los Angeles, a big Talmud Chacham. So what's the basis for that? Where does that come from? So basically, he's saying 3 slices is already, that's the amount of an average meal. So whether you're full or not, you have to make a moitzi. 2 slices he's holding is like 4 kibbutz, where the Mishnah Berurah says you should have another slice, of bread to be sure. But he's using the Alter Rebbe's concept that if you are satisfied personally, so then we factor in the pain of the Ravid, and it's enough to bench on that. But I want to know too.
I also want nothing up. I'm tempted to go next door.
As of now, we have 9. Tell him the truth. Right? We can only speak the truth. We can only speak truth. Just tell me of 9. As of now, we're only going to have 9. What can I say?
You're saying that if you have 4, size of 4, you have to, like, if you don't want to wash, you don't want to just go with some or something. Say.
One more time.
You say that you have 4 or less, you're saying that you need to wash and put another piece of bread.
If you're going to be full on 4 or less. If you're not going to be full, you don't have to have another piece of bread. The mezonos up till 6. The Alter Rebbe says
if you're going to be full.
Up till 6, if you're not going to be full, you're good with mezonos. If you're going to be full, then more than 4, you can wash on that alone. Less than 4, you have to wash another piece of bread. Okay, Gimel. If you are not satisfied with this bread alone, but you're eating it with a side dish that is satisfying. For example, you're having a side dish of meat or fish or similar things until you're satisfied. So that counts, and it's like you're satisfied from that alone. Because that side dish is secondary to it. And you're chayav to bench midoiraisa. So therefore you can't get away with alamichya. If you eat 4 eggs worth plus a side dish till the extent that you're satisfied, you make hamotzi and bench. Less than that, you have to make a bracha on another piece of bread. So listen carefully. Listen carefully. The other side dishes count towards your satisfaction. They don't count towards the shiurim. They count towards your satisfaction. So if you're satisfied and you had less than 4, even though you're satisfied together with that. I know it doesn't look good, but we have another 4 on the way, but that's still not a minion, but I'm hoping for miracles.
I have one more coming.
Oh, shkol. Very good.
So what you're saying here is then if I go to a kiddush and I kind of fresh out on crackers and and fish and some other goodies, then I have to bench. Is that what you're saying here?
If you go to a kiddush and you fresh out on crackers and goodies
and cholent and cholent,
if you have a 4 kizesim, or 4 kibbeitzim of crackers, plus the other goodies that satisfy you, then according to the Alter Rebbe, you can wash and bench on that alone.
Oh, okay.
If you feel full after all that fressing, but you didn't have an amount of actual mezonos in the amount of 4 kibbeitzim, then you should really wash on another piece of bread.
Okay.
But so you wouldn't bench if you felt full and you had less than 4 kibbeitzim of mezonos. You wouldn't like.
Well, you can't bench on that alone. You're going to be in a doubtful situation.
So what you should do is like, okay, so let's say you're at this kiddush and you eat a couple of crackers and you have herring and salads and this and you feel full. So now you're saying you should go wash and
if it happens in the middle of your meal, we're going to learn about that in the next sif. We're going to learn about that in the next sif.
Okay.
We're going to learn about it. But here's the thing. If you are in this situation, it would seem that you should simply say ala michya before you get full. You're middle of the kiddush, you're enjoying it, you're coming to a point that you may get full, stop eating the mezonos bread. I mean the crackers and all the chazarai, cakes, cookies, stop it. Say ala michya. At that point, you're okay because you're not full yet. And you didn't have 6 eggs. As long as you didn't have 6 eggs worth and you're not full, the ala michya covers you. Okay, now you can eat the rest of the stuff because you're already done with the grain foods. You said that after bracha, you're covered. And as far as the other foods, you can continue eating. You'll say a burn of fudges afterwards. No problem.
You don't eat more crackers.
No.
Yeah, but herring is not as geschmack without a cracker.
I hear you, but listen, being Jewish has its limitations. Limitations on geschmackheit. But if you do want to continue eating crackers, so Emmanuel, if you want to continue eating the crackers, now to be able to eat them, you're going to either have to wash on another piece of bread, or have 4 kibbeitzim worth and be full and be able to eat, and be able to say to hamoitzi and benching on that itself. See what I'm saying? That's the only way we'll be able to continue eating crackers. To have the shear plus satisfaction.
You don't need to get less than the 4, less than the 6.
No, less. Well, if you're satisfied, less than the 6 doesn't help you. If you're satisfied.
I can eat less than 6. Another 6.
How are you not going to be satisfied? You're going to keep any. I mean, unless you're eating it in such a spaced out way, but then you don't even have to say ala michya at all. You just space it out and continue spacing it out. All right, so tomorrow, Mirz Hashem, we're going to cover the question of what if you realize in the middle of your eating that you're approaching satisfaction, or that you're approaching this shiur, these different shiurim, what to do. And then we're going to get into the sugya of mezonos bread. Is there such a thing? Cakes, cookies, crackers. I want to point out that this whole thing that we're learning now about being satisfied with the side dishes is a major issue when it comes to the airplane meals. The airplane meals, some hechsherim don't give you mezonos bread anymore. The OU says, sorry, we don't hold the mezonos bread. Wash or save it for later. But there are some machshem that still give you mezonos bread. The badatz edach haredis, for example, halal, gives you mezonos bread. So let's say you hold that mezonos bread is mezonos, which is a separate question. We're going to learn about it. Let's say you hold mezonos bread as mezonos, but if you eat that mezonos and the side dish and the main dish and at the end of everything you're satisfied, you might be in trouble. So if you're satisfied by the bread plus the side dishes, I'm saying if those other foods contribute to the satisfaction. This whole thing is a machlekes, but yes. No, it's not. I don't think it's a machlekes. It's a machlekes if we care. No, some say that satisfaction is not enough unless you have a shear. But according to Alter Rebbe, he's choishish for the sheet of the Ravid. That once you're satisfied, it's a suffix anyway.
So practically, what would you do though?
I'm sorry?
That roll on the plane doesn't have to be forgiving.
Practically, what would you
If you're
do?
satisfied, you're in trouble anyway. If it's for kibbetzim, then it's good because then you can wash on that alone if you're satisfied. But it's not going to be for kibbetzim anyway.
Are you saying this is all like a we're going to discuss what's going to be in the middle of the meal tomorrow, the next time?
Yeah, what to do if you really realize in the middle, yes.
Oh, okay, got it.
Is there an amount of slice of challah that equal all these egg volumes? Beli Neder, I'll bring in the Kazayas book next week and we'll give you some visuals.
Great.
Thanks.
Yeah, next time, we'll do it next time. My pleasure. Thank you. Have a good night. Good rest of the week.